There is a specific hollow ache in realizing that the people who gave you life are the very ones you had to escape to survive. I'm sitting by the window tonight, watching the streetlights flicker against the rain, and it's quiet. A bit too quiet, perhaps. I was just looking at an old silver key at the bottom of my desk drawer, a key to a house I haven't entered in years, and I realized my hand was shaking, just a little. It's strange, isn't it? How a piece of metal or a name on a screen can still trigger a landslide inside of you, even after all this time. You probably remember a time, way back, when family was just a word for safety. You were small and the world was large, and you assumed the people holding your hand were leading you toward the light. But for you, well, the light started to feel more like a spotlight, or perhaps a fire. The kitchen table didn't feel like a gathering place. It felt like a courtroom where you were always the defendant. Let's be honest for a second. Choosing to walk away wasn't an act of cruelty. It was a final, gasping breath of air from someone who was drowning. You reached a point where the only way to keep your soul alive was to let the relationship die. It wasn't a falling out. It was an evacuation. And I want you to know, as we sit here in this shared silence, that choosing yourself over a toxic legacy isn't a failure. It's an act of profound, terrifying courage. In the architecture of the human mind, betrayal by a primary caregiver isn't just a wound, it's a foundational collapse. Imagine building a house on a fault line. You spend your entire life trying to keep the walls straight, trying to patch the cracks as they appear, but eventually you realize the ground itself is trying to swallow you. That is what it feels like to live with a family that demands your submission in exchange for their love. Your nervous system becomes a map of scars, constantly scanning for the next tremor. And then there is the FOG, that thick, suffocating mist of fear, obligation, and guilt. It feels like walking through a knee-deep swamp of shoulds. I should call because they're getting older. I should forgive because they did their best. This is the psychological mechanism of a trauma bond, where the brain becomes addicted to the tiny crumbs of affection dropped between long periods of neglect or control. It's a chemical cycle that rewires your brain to seek safety from the very person who is causing the danger. In your body, it feels like a permanent knot in the pit of your stomach, a physical manifestation of a heart that is being pulled in two opposite directions at once. We also have to talk about the internalized critic. Even after you change your number, even after you move across the country, the voice stays. It's like a jagged piece of shrapnel left behind after the explosion. This is the introjected voice of the family system, a cruel mimic living in the back of your skull that whispers you're selfish or ungrateful whenever you experience a moment of genuine joy. Cutting contact isn't just about a physical distance. It's about the slow, agonizing process of de-identification. It is the work of surgically removing their voice from your own internal monologue, so that for the first time in your life, you can finally hear yourself think. It is a lonely, cold process, but it's the only way to finally build a home that is truly your own. But there is a heavier silence that follows the break, the silence of a society that doesn't understand. We live in a world that sanctifies the family bond above all else, often at the expense of the individual's sanity. When you tell people you don't speak to your parents, you see that flicker of judgment in their eyes. They assume you are the difficult one, the ungrateful child. They don't see the decades of being an emotional landfill, where you were expected to hold all the bitterness, the secrets, and the failures of the adults who were supposed to protect you. They don't understand that you aren't just grieving the people you left behind. You are grieving the people they were never capable of being. This is the double grief. It is the loneliest funeral in the world because you are mourning someone who is still alive, yet forever out of reach. Yet, in this heavy silence, something remarkable begins to happen. When you finally stop trying to patch the cracks in a house built on a fault line, You are free to walk away and find solid ground. This is the radical act of self-parenting. It is the moment you look at that wounded child inside of you and say, I will be the walls you never had. I will be the safety you were denied. The unthinkable cure of estrangement isn't an act of hate. It is an act of ultimate boundaries. It is the quiet realization that your peace is worth more than a seat at a table where you are constantly being served poison. You might feel like a self-contained island right now, far away from the mainland of your past. But look around. On this island, the air is clear, the ground is steady, and for the first time, you can plant a garden that won't be trampled. It takes a terrifying amount of courage to choose a failed relationship over a failed life. But as you sit there tonight, watching the streetlights, remember this: the silence isn't a void. It is the sound of a heart finally learning to beat for itself. There is a profound, echoing cost to being the one who breaks the chain. We often talk about the freedom of walking away, but we rarely sit with the weight of the social orphanage that follows. It is the grief of the living, a funeral that happens every single morning when you wake up and realize that the foundation you were promised simply does not exist. Carl Jung once noted that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But for those of us who have cut ties, that privilege comes at a staggering price. It is the sacrifice of belonging for the sake of authenticity. To the family system, you are a part, a role, a function. To become a person, you had to leave the machine entirely. Let's pause here for a moment, because I know how heavy this realization feels. I had to take a breath before writing this part, because it reminds me of the sheer exhaustion of having to be your own parent, your own protector, and your own witness, all at once. The core fear driving this isn't just a fear of them, it's a fear of the void. When you remove the primary architects of your identity, you are left standing in a vast empty field with no map. You lose the nostalgic anchor, the ability to look back at childhood photos without a cold shiver of cognitive dissonance. You trade the warmth of a dysfunctional home for the cold of a healthy isolation. Philosophically, this is the ultimate act of existential rebellion. You are refusing to be a ghost in someone else's story, even if it means being a stranger in your own history. It is a repetitive, daily choice to choose the truth over the comfort of the lie. But that truth, well, it's a lonely companion, isn't it? I'll admit, seeing myself in these patterns was a bitter pill to swallow. I know this part might feel like I'm reading your private diary. It felt like that for me too. But we have to look at the scars if we ever want them to stop burning. We must realize that the traits we often despise in ourselves aren't who we are. They are fossilized coping strategies. They are the armor you never took off because you were never told the war was over. You might see this manifest in your life today in ways that feel entirely unrelated to your family, yet they are the direct descendants of that original fracture. The over-functioning professional. In the workplace, you are the one who cannot say no. You work twice as hard as everyone else because subconsciously, you believe that your value is tied to your utility. If you aren't useful, you are disposable. You are constantly waiting for a boss to evict you from your position. Sound familiar? The hyper-independent wall. In romantic relationships, you are a fortress. You handle everything yourself. The moment a partner tries to care for you, you feel a spike of irritation or even panic. To you, needing someone feels like a trap, a vulnerability that was used against you once, and you've sworn it will never happen again. The testing ritual. You might find yourself unconsciously pushing people away or picking fights just to see if they will leave. You are looking for proof that everyone eventually goes, so you can beat them to the punch. It's an agonizing way to live, isn't it? The chronic observer. Even in a room full of friends, you feel like a ghost. You are hyper-attuned to the micro shifts in the room, the way someone sighs, the way a chair scrapes. You aren't present, you are patrolling. Your nervous system is still looking for the exit. The terror of good enough parenting. If you have children, you likely live in a state of constant, low-grade moral panic. You are so terrified of repeating the cycle that you overcorrect, struggling to find the balance between the structure you lacked and the freedom you were denied. Perhaps the most painful symptom is the inability to trust peace. When things go well, you don't feel happy. You feel suspended. You are waiting for the other shoe to drop, because in your original home, every moment of peace was merely the silence before a storm. Actually, let me rephrase that. You aren't broken for feeling these things. You are resilient. These behaviors were the high-tech security systems that kept your spirit alive when you were a child with no power. But now you have the power. The first step of unlearning isn't to fix these things. It's to witness them without judgment. It's to look at your hyper-independence or your workaholism and say, I see you. Thank you for protecting me when I was small, but I'm safe now. You can rest. It's exhausting trying to be a whole person when you had to build yourself from scraps, but you are building, and that is enough. So where do we go from here? It's a question that often feels like a heavy door we're afraid to open, because for so long we've been told that healing means reconciliation, that it means going back. But I want to suggest something different tonight. Maybe healing isn't about finding a way back to a burning house. Maybe it's about finally learning how to build a home inside yourself. Well, let me be honest with you for a second. I had to stop and look at my own hands before typing this. I don't have all the answers. I'm still practicing these things myself, still learning how to set a boundary without the immediate, nauseating wave of guilt following close behind. We're doing this together. I'm a fellow traveler on this road, not someone standing at the finish line. Healing from this kind of fracture isn't a straight line. It's more like a spiral. Some days you feel light, free, and grounded, and other days, a single scent or a holiday commercial can make you feel like that small, powerless child all over again. And that's okay. Actually, let me rephrase that. It's necessary. We are not fixing a broken machine. We are learning to be kind to a wounded heart. The work of reparenting sounds like a clinical term, but in reality, it is a very soft, very quiet process. It's the moment you notice your jaw is clenched and your shoulders are up to your ears, and you choose to simply exhale. It's the act of talking to that younger version of yourself, the one who was the emotional shock absorber, and saying, "You did a great job. You kept us alive, but you can rest now. I'll take it from here." It is the radical act of providing for yourself the very things they couldn't give you: consistency, safety, and a love that doesn't require you to disappear. And then there is the shadow work. This is the part where we stop trying to exile our anger or our coldness. We realize that the angry part of us was actually the only part that loved us enough to say no more. We learn to integrate that shadow. We stop apologizing for the space we take up in the world. The philosopher Baruch Spinoza once wrote, "All things excellent are as difficult as they are rare." There is nothing more difficult and nothing more excellent than choosing to be whole when you were raised to be a fragment. As you move forward, I want you to remember that the goal isn't to be fixed. You aren't a project. You are a person who has survived the unthinkable and chosen the unknown over the unbearable. Take a moment right now, just a small one, to let your muscles soften. Unclench your teeth. Let the air fill your lungs completely. You are here. You are safe. And for the first time in your life, you are yours. If this reflection felt like a hand on your shoulder tonight, I'd be honored if you stayed a while. Subscribe and join our small circle of fellow travelers as we navigate these deep waters together. We are all just trying to find our way back to our truest selves. I'll leave you with this one final thought, something I wrote while thinking about the quiet courage it takes to walk away. The bravest thing you will ever do is become the parent you never had, for the child you still are. Sleep well. You've earned the peace.